Welcome back to Peak Into COS. This episode is brought to you from the Studio 809 Community Podcast at The Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Mantz, an adaptive athlete based in Denver. Brandon, welcome.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for inviting me on. It's cool to be a part of it.
Nice to have you. Thanks for making the trek up to 6,035 feet versus the Mile High City.
I was glad there was no snow this morning. It was an easy drive from Denver, just over an hour.
Awesome. Well, we met Brandon through our partnership with accessible travel company called Wheel the World. And today we're going to be talking about what it's like traveling to Colorado Springs with a disability from Brandon's point of view. So, Brandon, let's start by telling listeners a little bit about yourself and how you became an adaptive athlete.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start back in Wisconsin, where I was born and raised, went to college there, was always an athlete. I played multiple sports in high school. I played baseball in college. Afterwards, I graduated college with a business degree. I was, moving up the ranks at my job and playing baseball still, doing running, getting into more just outdoor activities, and had gotten a promotion at the time doing sales that had the opportunity to cover the Mountain and Pacific time zones. And
what line of business were you in?
Sales of power products.
Oh, okay.
So in the industrial electrical world, and then I moved to a position that worked in the RV industry and was selling solar panels and batteries and inverters, the whole electrical systems for RVs and camper vans. So kind of getting into that outdoor industry. And so then I was able to move out to Colorado in 2018 for work and just enjoy all of the things that beautiful Colorado has to offer with hiking and biking and skiing and trail running and just the health and fitness lifestyle and active vibe that people have here a lot of the times. And so in 2018, September of 2018, I moved out here. And then in December of 2018, so coming up on 6 years ago, I was skiing in Breckenridge and had a bad crash, broke my back, had 5 broken ribs, broke my shoulder, internal bleeding, punctured lungs, and so was down really bad. My whole group was ahead of me, and so there was a stranger that saw me down and found me, and he was a hand surgeon in the medical field. So he right away he visited me afterwards in the hospital, so I got to hear his account. I don't remember any part of the accident, and so along with that was a complete spinal cord compression. So I got the Flight for Life helicopter ride, emergency blood transfusions, and then back surgery. And really the first thing I remember was waking up in the hospital with a doctor standing over me, and I still had the breathing tube in and hooked up with all types of chest tubes, and the doctor telling me that I was paralyzed and had a 0% chance of ever walking again.
Wow. So we're coming up on 6 years.
Yeah,
and I don't know, I guess, it's an anniversary, not one that you necessarily celebrate, but here we are, and you're talking about it.
Yeah.
You've become an adaptive athlete.
Yeah, I do try to celebrate it every year in its own way, and call it a lifeiversary, and really get a chance to say, like, hey, this bad thing happened to me, but I got a second chance at life, and really owning that day. And it's looked different between waves of grief and emotions and highs and lows over the years.
Were you married at the time, or did you subsequently get married?
Yeah, afterwards. So I had been dating Mickey for about a year. and we were doing long distance when I was in Wisconsin, and she was actually out here in Colorado already.
Okay. Right.
And then I was able to move out, and so we were dating about a year before I got injured.
I see.
And so that was a whole nother wave of emotions and going through that in a relationship. And we got married 3 years ago.
Okay.
So
That's
figured out a lot of different things, and are living life together.
so. I'm guessing you're probably in your late 20s.
31 now.
You're now 31.
31.
Okay, you're
So I was
looking good.
25 when I got injured.
Okay, so 31. So you've been traveling. I mean, like, when did you begin to start to travel with your disability?
Not long after I got out of the rehab hospital, I took a trip down to Florida to watch some spring training baseball in
Doctor's orders, right?
Yeah, in March. So I was released from Craig Hospital in Denver in February, and then in March, so a couple months after I got injured. But I had 2 big suitcases, needed a lot of assistance, and was really trying to figure out how to navigate the world. I was lucky. I traveled a lot for work and other things before I got injured, so I had this love for adventure and travel, and ability to navigate airports, and was comfortable with all of that. But then having it as a wheelchair user and a seated lens really changed everything. And really after my accident and becoming an adaptive athlete, I really had to reinvent what activity looked like for me, and what that was, what fitness looked like, what adventure looked like, and fun. And so there was a whole testing period.
You just used a term called seated lens. Talk to us about that. What, to listeners and myself, I mean, help us. What does that mean and look like to you?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. There's the physical, which I am 6'2", was used to being one of the taller people in the room, and there's this power dynamic when you're seated and always looking up at people, and people are talking down on you, and then you're in situations and groups and crowds where it's hard to see. It impacts the experience. And so just from a physical standpoint, it was something that I personally had to get used to, and took a little while. So there's the mental and the physical, and then just navigating some of the physical barriers that I wasn't aware of before. I didn't have someone super close to me that was disabled or a wheelchair user, and so I didn't really have a gauge or a lens of all of the little things in life that I now have as micro calculations, and some of them now have become second nature, and that's just the way I live life. But I think for a lot of disabled people, there's a lot of micro calculations throughout the day that can lead to extra exhaustion, and especially when you're talking about experiences and fun and vacation and trips and activities, just all the extra effort that goes behind that.
I think, one of the things I'd like to have you talk a little bit about, I think it's remarkable that, within a month of you getting out of Craig, you took a trip to Florida for baseball, and did you go by yourself?
I flew by myself. My parents they flew from Wisconsin down there, so they picked me up at the airport. But
I would like for you to, I realized at the time you were 25 or 26 years old. So you were young enough that you had the energy and the drive to go do this so soon after. How would you encourage somebody who's listening to this who either is disabled themselves or has a family member who they haven't really thought about inviting to come to Colorado Springs? What would your advice be on making and planning for that first trip?
Yeah, the first trip can be scary, and when I think about accessibility and something that the city and area of Colorado Springs does really well is accessibility benefits everybody, not just not just me as a wheelchair user, but it's the aging population that might not, walk as good as they used to and get around. It's the young families that might be navigating a stroller. So when we're talking about accessibility, I think it really benefits everybody. And some of those little things that I mentioned that I'm always micro-calculating when it's your first trip, if some of those are taken care of. Just things around the city like great curb cutouts, great accessible parking, activities that have adaptive bikes that you can rent, places like Garden of the Gods and Pikes Peak that have gorgeous views, and also the same experience for people of any ability level or disability level to experience those in and with each other in the same experience is a really cool thing. Things like the Olympic and Paralympic Museum is a really cool offering to check out where they're not separated. They're one and the same. And so those are the things that I really enjoy when I can integrate with my friends, my family, my wife, and do experiences and activities just in and with everybody else. And it might look a little bit differently for me. Like I'm not on a two-wheel stand-up bike pedaling with my legs, but we're biking side by side, and I'm using a hand cycle bike.
Right. That's a great way of saying it. Wheel the World. I mean, you came down here at our invitation to shoot a video and talk a little bit about what it's like. And I don't know how much time you spent on their site, but for us, Wheel the World, we're Olympic City, USA, and we strive, and we're really trying to learn from people like you and others of how can we get the experience so close. I mean, you talked about the joy of moving to Colorado and experiencing all things that we who are blessed to live here get a chance to do. Have you had a chance with Wheel the World to go other places, and what would you encourage people to look for?
Yeah, that was my first trip with Wheel the World, and I think it comes down to resources and education. It can be very difficult to even find information on if a restaurant is accessible, and that's getting better with technology and being able to access more information online, but from an accessibility standpoint, it can be challenging to find. So with something like Wheel the World, where you have everything that you need to have an awesome trip and experience baked into one site with people that know about different needs and different disabilities, and going as far as making sure the little details in hotel rooms meet your needs, getting access to accessible rental cars, and all of the activities that they've vetted and processed through their systems by inviting people like me with real disabilities to experience that, collect the feedback, and offer a lot of those activities. I can't say enough good things about how streamlined and easy, and my wife and I are talking to Wheel the World about going down to South America in 2025 and experiencing Argentina and Chile and Patagonia.
Of how it all started. Yeah, exactly. So for listeners, the site is wheeltheworld.com. We here in Colorado Springs really got prompted to take a good look at the disabled travel market when we were involved with some research, and there was a company that started to look at the fact that the disabled travel market in the U.S. is only $58 billion a year. And they use the word only because there's so many others who choose not to travel. One of the quotes that I'll never forget was when someone in that research made the comment, they actually only feel disabled when they leave their home. And so they chose not to leave their home because that was their comfort zone. Well, we got involved with Wheel the World. We had them come down here and kind of do an assessment of our destination. And we have a research firm that we're involved with called Longwoods. And Longwoods, in their study, visitor profile from the year 2023, told us that 31% of the travel parties who came to Colorado Springs, they had a member of their travel party that required accessibility services at 31%. The U.S. norm is 17%.
Wow.
So for us, as being home to the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, training center, national governing bodies, 5 military installations, it's very obvious that people with disabilities already are coming to Colorado Springs, and for us, we really had to stand back as the Visitors Bureau and say, how much do we really know about the experience? Because Brandon, we know your needs are different than other people's needs, and frankly, for us, Wheel the World was the one-stop shop. It was the Expedia for people with disabilities, and you've already touched on tips of things to look for. One thing that you mentioned, you talked about the small details in a hotel room. Can you talk a little bit more about what's important to you in a hotel room?
Yeah, definitely. So some of the things that there's nice to haves and then there's also non-negotiables.
Okay, got it.
And so for me, I'm young. I'm a manual wheelchair user. I have a lot of upper body strength, and so I can make things work. I've gone to different Airbnbs that weren't fully accessible,
okay,
and have made things work.
Got it.
But it takes a whole lot of pressure and makes the experience better when something is fully accessible. So things like the bed height, that is a level transfer from the wheelchair. A lot of hotel beds are up a little bit higher, and that can be very difficult to get in and out of. The bathroom is a big one, making sure that width, you have room to maneuver around in there. You can close the door. The roll under sink, I call it a nice to have because that's not something I even have at home.
Wow.
And so the shower is a big one, making sure that there's a shower seat in there and a roll-in access to that. So all of those features can be difficult to find on just hotel websites, and so Wheel the World goes above and beyond to evaluate all of those features, and it takes the guesswork out of it. It takes the multiple calls to make sure that, hey, I booked an accessible room. Do you have it reserved for me?
Right.
Confirming that it has a roll-in shower, and then you show up and it's still not what you had booked and asked for. So, with Wheel the World, it takes all those extra steps and the guesswork right out of it.
Well, and I imagine that you are somebody who probably respects other travelers' comments too. I mean, it's one thing for an able-bodied person to be looking at a destination and say, oh, that sounds like a great place I'd like to go. But for all the needs that you've described, and as you said, you're fortunate that you're young, you've got upper body strength and everything else, but I imagine that when you read reviews, you read them through a little different lens. Fair?
Right, yeah. You have to take them with a fine tooth comb almost. And like we talked about the seated lens before, I'm looking for different things, not just about the experience, but I'm looking for details on if there's parking that's available around the venue or whatever it is that you're doing, or if I'm going to be able to go to the bathroom, because there's a lot. And the more you get out of your comfort zone and the more experiences you do have in different cities and places, you run into different challenges. But a lot of people will point to the ADA being around for a long time now, and I've gotten comments from friends or others that well, don't they have to be accessible by law? But there's a lot of ways that you don't have to be, and a lot of places don't meet that standard or meet that code, and the more situations that you're in, the more you're gonna run into it, and so going into a situation and just trying to find all that information to see if I'm gonna be able to experience it like everybody else, or can I only stay an hour, because as soon as I have to go use the bathroom, there's not one for me here, so I have to leave, I guess.
Sure. Here's an easy one for you. What is an adaptive athlete?
An adaptive athlete, I would categorize as anybody that participates in adaptive sport. I think it was Nike that coined the phrase, like, everybody that has a body is an athlete.
Okay.
And so I was always an athlete before I got injured, and so I consider myself an athlete afterwards. So I've done a lot of adaptive CrossFit, and I've done some competitions now, and I competed at the adaptive CrossFit games this year and got third place in the seated division, so that was pretty cool. But last year I did a adaptive CrossFit competition in Barcelona, Spain. I've done some in North Carolina, and for me, just fitness and health is super important, and even more so after I became paralyzed, because I see the direct benefits to my quality of life. And so maybe anybody that is newly injured or comes in with a diagnosis, I would say that there is always a way to better your life. And taking care of the body that you do have, or the function that you that you do have, is so much more important to me now, because I saw how fragile I was after the injury, and coming out of rehab and just learning to do everything in a different way, and struggling to even put my socks on in the morning and get out of bed, and having to calculate my errands where I could really only do one a day, because I just didn't have the strength and the stamina to be loading my wheelchair and pushing around. And so after I was able to get a little bit stronger, it really gave me the confidence to go out and travel, where I can walk side by side with my wife. Well, she's walking and I'm rolling, but I don't have to temper my experience because I'm able to roll around, and as long as there's no physical barriers, we can go out and not have any limitations. So I really truly view life as a gift, and whatever cards you're dealt, whatever body that you're given, there's I believe that there's a way that you can optimize and maximize whatever that looks like for you to improve your quality of life.
Very, very well said. Before we wrap, we want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, which is the Pikes Peak Region Holiday Gift Guide. So prepare for the winter holidays by shopping for locally made gifts and experiences to give to your loved ones. This holiday season, you can score great gifts and support local businesses at the same time. Finding the perfect present for your friends and family members can be daunting, so we're making it a bit easier with our Pikes Peak Region Holiday Gift Guide. Some featured items include passes to City Rock Climbing Gym, local honey and jam from the Callister House Museum, and gift boxes from Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. You can browse the full gift guide at visitcos.com/gifts. So, Brandon, number one, this has been it's been a great conversation. I appreciate your openness and to share and just talk about what it's like for you, and so I've got a couple of questions that we'd like to close with each guest in asking. And though I know you live in Denver, you've been to Colorado Springs several times, so I want to ask you, in 3 words, how would you describe Colorado Springs?
3 words. That's going to be challenging because there's so much here to offer. I would start with adventure.
Adventure.
And do you want me to elaborate or
nope,
keep it
just
to
3 words?
3 words. Adventure. Welcoming.
Okay.
And vibrant.
Okay, good. You live along the Front Range, and so I'm curious if you could tell listeners, what's your happy place? Like, what's your favorite little hidden gem that you like to go to that is just maybe yours and Mickey's place?
Yeah, there's so many things up and down the Front Range that Colorado has to offer, and yeah, I think a lot of people around the Denver area don't get down to Colorado Springs
right.
as much as they should, and even driving down this morning is only an hour drive, and so just getting that crossover and exploring more. Yeah. You spend more time trying to get out on I-70 out to the mountain towns to ski and bike than it does to get down here. So one place that I really love that is also awesome with accessibility is Red Rocks Amphitheater over there. Big fan of music and,
sure.
and being in the outdoors and the views over there. So we really enjoy taking in concerts over at Red Rocks. And
we'll have to invite you to our new Ford Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Which you would have passed today right there by the Air Force Academy, and to enjoy some live music next summer. I imagine you've got a bucket list, and is there a place along the Front Range that is still on your bucket list that you say, we got to go do this?
Yeah, so I have an adaptive mountain bike that has an e-assist battery, and so I have been hoping to get the mountain bike out more often, and we're kind of getting into the winter season here, but next year I'm hoping to just get the mountain bike out and more experiences throughout the Front Range, because it's a device that being in a wheelchair all the time, you're constantly dealing with physical barriers, and having a mountain bike is such a freeing feeling to be out on the bike, being able to cruise around, really being able to get into the mountains. And so there's not a specific trail or town or experience that I would say I have on my bucket list for Colorado, but I've been pretty fortunate. I've been to quite a few Colorado mountain towns for skiing or biking or vacation, and I will say, from an accessibility standpoint, some of those mountain towns can be very challenging when it comes to accessibility, especially in the winter season when there's snow. And I get they're trying to preserve the beautiful, downtowns and main streets of these mountain towns that are older, that weren't built with accessibility in mind. But navigating can be very challenging. You run into a lot of barriers. A lot of the towns are very hilly as well, so even just trying to push uphill is challenging. So the Colorado Springs area is actually very, very flat, especially the city of Colorado Springs, and even driving up to Pikes Peak, which is a short drive, has awesome lookouts and activities to do over there, and it is much more accessible than some of the other mountain towns that are out there.
Interesting. Put a bow on this for us, if you would. Let listeners know, is there a place that they can follow your travels? Do you've got a account that you can share with listeners, and how would you like them to be thinking about your journey? Yeah,
you can follow me on Instagram at brandon.mantz.
Mantz.
Correct. And am trying to post more about adaptive fitness. I just went to California and stayed in an accessible camper van.
Okay.
And camped for a couple of days and lived the van life, which was pretty cool. So trying to post more about those different experiences. Great. As kind of the first 5 years after my injury was learning and navigating, and I'm always still learning and trying to push myself out of my comfort zone, and trying to network with other wheelchair users and people with disabilities to see if there's better or more efficient ways to do things than what I've grown to know and learn. And with changing technology, what's the latest and greatest thing out there that can make an experience more accessible. And so I've learned a lot from other people and mentors when it comes to travel, and so trying to give back in a way where I have some experience now, and I feel like I've done it pretty well, and have done a lot of solo travels, a lot of travels with family, a lot of travels with my wife, and we have our different systems and tricks and things like that. So trying to bring more awareness, but if there's somebody specifically, feel free to shoot me a message if you have a specific question on an area or travel or Colorado Springs, or just navigating the world with a disability or a wheelchair. I'm more than happy to engage and
that's super.
And chat.
Well, so it's brandon.mantz on Instagram. We've talked about wheeltheworld.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, you may have found us at visitcos.com. And Brandon, again, thank you for just being so open and encouraging to others who are in a position to either have to deal with something that life has dealt them, or has family and friends that they'd like to invite to the area, and you've really given them some good fuel for thought. So thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Doug.